5 years from now, 2025, who's selling more cars? Tesla with the Model Y or Ford with the Mach E? Tesla Model Y versus the Mustang Mach E. Whose team are you on?
Well, I mean,
what car are you buying?
Well, I mean, neither. But, you know.
What car are you buying if you had Jeff Bezos money?
Oh, okay. I feel like it's still too early to say. I mean, I am interested in the Mach E, but mainly more so because it's something different. And I've seen enough Teslas in my life at this point that I'm willing to just kind of give a chance to something that's still good, if the specs will actually be those specs, and isn't Tesla.
Now the Mach E, I know all the other cars didn't reach their spec expectations, but this has already got a EPA rated range, I believe, and all of that. Like, it's confirmed. It's not like when Mercedes unveiled the EQC or Audi, and they unveiled it with a bunch of numbers, but then the actual car came out with a lot less. Like, I believe these are all official.
I don't think so, because I feel like when I look at the text, the tech sheets, it still says those are the
targeting.
Those are the numbers they're targeting.
It does.
You're right. I mean, I feel like since they specifically said they're targeting the EPA numbers, the production numbers should probably be closer to what they say they should be as compared to when European automakers say their WLTP targets and then come to the EPA side, and it's a much bigger difference than what we expected. I feel since they are saying that these are the EPA numbers they're targeting, that the production cars shouldn't have too big of a difference between what they say it is and what will actually happen.
Do you think this close to selling them? I believe they're probably already in production or very close to it, right? You think this close to its release, those numbers are going to still be way off? You think it's going to be a surprise?
No.
Or do you think it's going to be closer?
I mean, I would hope that it would not be off by even more than, let's see, if they want 300 miles. Even 10% would be pretty big. So I'm hoping that they can stay within at least like a 5% margin or whatnot, so that they're still in the upper 200s, which is more than enough for basically any person that's not just going on long distance drives every day.
Okay, do you agree with this statement? The Mustang Mach E is the closest Tesla competitor. No car has come as close to Tesla.
Well, I can't say yes or no at this point because they haven't delivered on it yet.
Based off the numbers they're shooting for. Let's just say it's already on the road at these numbers.
Well, I can say that probably the Lucid is a better competitor if those numbers will be true and they actually build it.
Well, the Lucid's a luxury car.
Yeah, but it's the Model S competitor.
It's a low volume.
It's probably.
I mean, what's the Model 3 and Y outsell the S and X to? 5-1, something ridiculous.
Even more. Like 8-1 at this point, 7-1.
Let's get more specific then. Is the Mach E the closest Tesla Model Y competitor?
Well, probably yes. I mean, if we just run through them real quick, I mean, the I-Pace is just too expensive at this point to be a good competitor, and they don't make that much of them. The Kona Electric, whilst a good, actually a very good alternative, especially at the price point, Hyundai just doesn't make a lot of them, especially for the U.S. market. It's probably more feasible in Europe as an alternative.
I also wouldn't put them in the same segment.
Really?
Yeah, no, there's no way.
What segment would you?
Uh, I don't. It's not a compact car. It's not a sedan, but it's smaller than a crossover. It's a small
I mean, it's a small
SUV.
SUV for
Mm,
me.
I believe crossovers are smaller than small SUVs.
I I think crossover is such a vague
Well, the
representation
Toyota
or
RAV4
a
was
vague.
the very first car to be called a crossover. And
Yeah, but
today's crossovers are smaller than the RAV4.
yeah, but all the no, I think all the cars have gotten bigger since then. Regardless, the electric car availability marketplace isn't that thick enough at this point that we can have that many distinctions between the vehicle segments. So for the time being, I consider the Kona at least somewhat of a competitor to the Model Y because it is a small SUV slash crossover slash whatever you want to call it. And then, well, the e-tron's not a competitor in terms because it's bigger and much more expensive. The EQC doesn't exist in America and is bigger. So at this point, the Mach E, upon its supposed production at the end of 2020, should be the most viable Model Y alternative, especially coming from an established automaker who has proved that they can build cars for the past over 100 years. So
if we run
yeah,
through the numbers real quick, the current Model Ys available are only the long range and the performance. So currently it starts at 52,990.
mm-hmm.
And it is a long range, 316 miles, so it's hard to compare with the Mach E. But if we go to the Mach E Premium, what is that priced at?
Low 50s.
I know the extended range battery is like 5,000, about 55,000 roughly. And that car, those two cars currently would be the only two comparable, since there is no standard range Model Y, and there also won't be the standard battery for the Mach E, at least not out the gate, because they're going to do the first edition models up front.
First edition first.
So apples to apples would be long range Model Y versus Mach E Premium with the extended range battery. Price wise, Mach E's $3,000 more roughly, but
qualifies.
But you also get $7,500 back.
Right.
Rebate.
If you qualify.
Yeah, if you qualify. Range is pretty comparable. 300 versus 316.
16. Yeah.
But you also have no range degradation with the Mach E, which is something that people don't really factor in. I mean, Tesla is very good at handling range degradation, but it does exist. Ford's setting aside around 10 kilowatts just to assure that you won't have any range degradation in your lifetime, in the lifetime of the vehicle, I should say. So that 300 miles, assuming they hit their EPA estimate, will be 300 miles, at least for the first 5 years or so.
Oh, I'm a bit skeptical on that part. I feel like there will at least be maybe insignificant amount of range degradation, but I still feel like there's going to be range degradation. I don't feel like in 4 years you're going to have the same 300 mile range that you had.
You can't go through 10 kilowatts of range degradation in a few years.
There'll be a guy. you know there'll be a guy who does nothing but like drag races the thing, and in 2 years he'll make some sort of YouTube video about how he has terrible range degradation on his Mach E. You know it's going to happen.
I mean, I only supercharge my car. My range degradation isn't too bad, but that's another story. That's a different story. How do you feel about cars that will set aside some little bit of kilowatts for range degradation? You think that should be the norm? You think Tesla's kind of like boosting numbers by not doing so? Because I feel the Mach E, if they used the full extent of their battery, could probably match that 316 miles.
Well, it's probably really dependent on what your final mileage is. So when you're able to hopefully squeeze out 300 miles from the battery, then I feel like people will be accepting of, 10% of the battery not being usable. But in the case of the Audi e-tron, where they also set aside 10 kilowatt hours or 15 kilowatt hours, 10 or 15%. I think it was 10%. And their final range was like 204 miles, then people might be less accepting of the fact because they'll see that the range is pretty low and it could have been higher if the company didn't set aside. Most people don't think of what's going to happen in 3 years, 4 years. They want, the instant gratification.
Yeah.
That's just the nature. So in that situation where the final range is pretty low comparatively to everything we have right now, people will find issue with it.
But who's going to have the more upset customer in, let's say, 5 years when the Model Y has less range than a used Mach E? In one hand, you're giving the customer what they want up front with higher mileage, but what about your name, your brand in 5 years down the line?
Well, what's the average
range degradation?
No, not that. The average amount of years someone keeps their new car.
I think it averages out to something like 6 years.
Okay.
I have to find the exact number, but it's not much. Not much.
I don't know. Maybe you hope that within 3 to 4 years people will get a new car and they won't notice it or something, and then people, when they buy the used version, they'll just say that that's just part of the price of paying for a used electric car. I don't know. That one's a good question. I don't know.
You're not on team storing battery?
I'm on team storing battery. I mean, if the difference between, hypothetically, is 300 miles for the Mach E and 316 for the Model Y, and in 5 years the Mach E will be able to have more range than the Model Y, then yeah, it totally makes sense because the initial difference between range is only 16 miles, or supposedly. But I feel like range anxiety is still so big of an issue that when an electric car gets close to that 200-mile barrier, is very psychological for a lot of people, and they might be willing to sacrifice the future degradation to get a range that's like 230 miles as opposed to 205 or something.
What other car in this segment has this much range? Is it close to the Model Y?
Only the Kona and the Nero. They're in the 260s, I want to say. 258? 263, something like that. But other than that...
They also cost much less, correct?
Correct. Well, low 30s, mid 30s.
I, again, wouldn't put those in the same segment. They're just much smaller cars.
I don't know about much smaller, but we'll disagree. We'll agree to disagree on that one. I feel like the price difference more than makes up for whatever size differences there are, but they're definitely less luxurious on the inside, I'll give you that, than, what we see from, the Model Y isn't particularly that luxurious on the inside anyway.
I don't think the Mach E will be either. Probably just have a standard Mustang interior.
Okay, but that's besides the point. Of cars that are released currently, there's nothing.
Nothing. Well, the Mach E also has one of the largest batteries on the market, 98.8 kilowatts. Again, separating 10 kilowatts or so out for degradation, they're really only using about 80-something. That's still pretty up there.
Do you think we'll get to the point where instead of like the kilowatt hours of the battery being a central specification, people will more start to look at the efficiency of how many miles per watt or whatever?
I think that's getting even deeper into it, and I think that the kilowatts is already too deep. I think everyone should just maybe get one standard range set and just leave it at that, and that would be the easiest way to transition people over to EVs. Or do what Tesla's doing and get rid of the kilowatt hours and just does short range, long range.
Yeah, but you don't think it's important? Because, two cars might have the same range, but it's going to take, twice the price.
From a spec perspective, sure, it's important, but in the same importance as like horsepower is, and you don't see horsepower advertised as boldly as you do battery size on electric vehicles. You know, people don't understand. The general customer doesn't understand what those numbers mean. Then they're just going to shoot for the higher number.
Well, I think for sports cars, the horsepower is definitely
true,
advertised a lot. It's just that
true, but we're talking about mass market, high volume vehicles.
I mean, yeah, Toyota does not advertise the horsepower of the Corolla or whatever.
At least not boldly.
One, because it's not that impressive.
Tesla used to have the model names, the 75D, 85, 90. It was just based off of the battery size. And I'm glad they moved away from that. It's too difficult to understand for the normal customer.
I don't know.
Your mom goes and buys a car right now. Does she know the difference between a 75D and a 90D?
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, she knows. I think she'll know that the bigger number means something better with the performance.
But that's also not necessarily the case, because you look at the Mach E and it has a 98.8 kilowatt hour battery. Meanwhile, the Model Y only has a roughly 50. I don't know if we have the exact number, but EV Compare shows it as 50 kilowatt hour battery. So that doesn't necessarily mean more range, because you also have to factor in, like you said earlier, efficiency. It's just too much to get into for it to be a number that we shout out.
I think that's something more to do with, this is probably going to be tangential, but more to do with how American companies name their cars and how Europeans name their cars. Because if you go to Europe, all the European brands, the cars don't have names, essentially, right? They're all just series with letters and numbers, and the higher number, the more performance there is. You know, the BMW 3 Series is 330, 335, 340, 345. You know that the numbers are going up. That's higher performance, bigger engine, whatever. Same thing with Volvo. They had a S40, then an S60, then an S80. Mercedes has their S550, S560, whatever. But in America, I guess they must have done some, testing of what consumers preferred back in the days, and found that American consumers do not like numbers and it's too complicated. So that's why basically no American automaker has a naming convention where the name of the car is just a letter and a number. That's why we have to have fancy names for basically every car that comes out. So I feel like it might be more of a demographic issue when it comes to that, in terms of what's complicated and what's not.
Well,
but that's just me going on a tangent.
Well, let's get back on track. Mach E versus Model Y. We've discussed battery, discussed range. Let's go into performance. Again, they stack up pretty well with the Model Y, of course, beating it out by a little bit, but which is a little bit surprising, because Mustang is known for performance. The Mach E Premium is rated at mid 6 second 0 to 60. I don't know if we have a top speed on it. It's
probably 111, I think.
It's only shooting about 332 horsepower. Nothing too impressive, especially for something under the Mustang name.
Yeah, if you want performance, you're going to have to wait for the GT model to come out, but you're sacrificing a lot of range to get the GT.
Whoa, yeah. Let's compare performance versus performance, since we're in the performance, subcategory here. The Model Y performance has only a 280 mile range, 155 mile an hour top speed, and a 0 to 60 of 3.5. The GT
I think
the Mustang Mach E GT is stated at a 0 to 60 of mid 3 seconds, which is exactly what Tesla's at 3.5 seconds.
Yeah, but the range suffers.
Range does suffer. What is it?
It's either
235.
I've seen two different numbers from Ford at this point. One saying 235, the other one saying 250. Both obviously are a big hit from the 300 miles that
Do you know the price of the GT model off the top of your head?
I think it's supposed to be above 60. Low 60s.
Let me check. 60,500 starting. So that what's the Model Y? Model Y performance is 60,990. So right on there with price. Again, you get $7,500 tax rebate if you qualify. with the Mach E. So you do lose a little bit of performance, and you lose range.
Of course, if you are fortunate enough to be able to charge your car in your house every day, then the range difference doesn't really matter too much for either of those cars. Range doesn't matter. We wrote that a year ago. Range does not matter.
Range isn't a real thing. Again, just get rid of the numbers. You're scaring people. No one needs to know no one needs to know they can only drive 300 miles.
I mean, I
do you know how many miles you could drive in your current car? No, you don't. You don't. No one knows.
Yeah, because I know that there's a gas station on every corner. I don't have to know.
Yeah, well, I got a outlet in my house too.
when every gas station is replaced with an electric charging station, then you can say that you don't need to know.
The biggest mental hurdle though is the fact that you can charge your car in your house though.
Yeah.
You can't fill up a gas car in your house.
True, but so many people live in apartments where that's just...
The majority of people would be perfectly fine with a Nissan Leaf, range-wise. No one really needs the 400-mile Model S.
As long as it's not the first generation.
I mean, I can't say no one.
Horrible degradation.
I can't say no one, but the majority of people don't need a 400-mile car. That's overkill for a lot of people. But they still see that number and they treat it as the reason not to buy. A lot of people will say I didn't buy an EV because we're getting off track.
Okay, all right. Which design do you like more?
Model Y versus Mach E. I'm gonna go Ford. And I'm not a fan of Ford cars. I did always like the Mustang, and I feel like the Mach E did bring that into it. I don't like Tesla's. I don't know how to call it. It's just so round.
Design language?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Fan of the Model S, even the original Model S, but every other car has had this same like bulgy look to it that I'm just not a fan of. I would still choose them over 99% of the cars on the market for the same price, but I'm not going to be a fan of what it looks like.
Do you think that the Mustang Mach E is deserving of the Mustang name?
No, but it's smart that they chose to use it. Okay. Like this is the car that they expected to change everything with this car. It's the first car transitioning themselves into the new. I don't know if you know, but Mustang in the early days, they actually created a second Mustang called the Mustang 2.
Yeah.
So this is just an extension of that. This is just showing, hey, this is the new route we're taking.
This is the Mustang 3?
This is the Mustang 3.
the Mustang E.
Ford's clearly moving in this direction where they're having kind of unrelated to EVs, but they're moving in a direction where their naming scheme is based off a brand. I don't know if you know about the Bronco, but the Bronco is now a line of vehicles. They have 3 completely different vehicles under the Bronco name. They have an SUV, a 4-door, and a 2-door. So they're kind of doing the same thing with the Mustang. So they're going to have the Mustang, they have a convertible Mustang, and then they have a crossover Mustang. It's just...
An interesting strategy.
I don't think I've seen it done before, but I'm not angry at it.
I mean, Hyundai, once again, unrelated. I mean, kind of related, but Hyundai kind of did that with the Genesis. They had the Hyundai Genesis, which was their more upscale car that they just decided to make, and then they decided to make the Genesis as kind of like a brand that was still a Hyundai. It was kind of like a side brand, but not completely independent of Hyundai. You know what I'm saying? So they have their more upscale luxury cars badges like Genesis vehicles that are still Hyundais. So yeah, that's the only other company I can think of off the top of my head that kind of does the similar thing.
Tesla keeps it simple.
Tesla does keep it simple in basically every regard.
What car do you want? Do you want it to go fast or do you want it to go far? That's about it.
Kind of give you both, honestly.
Now, how do you feel about Ford versus Tesla charging infrastructure? The Mach E is only rated 150 kilowatts, while Model Y can take advantage of Tesla's V3 superchargers at what, 250 or 225? I'm not sure.
250. Well, for the time being, there's not really that many supercharger V3s to take advantage of that. So it's not that big of an advantage at this point.
What about size-wise, network size? Because Tesla only uses their, well, not only, they have their proprietary network, and then they have access to any other network with an adapter. You would have to purchase an adapter. Meanwhile, Ford's route is they've partnered with Ionity and all these third-party networks to provide you access to all of them.
Well, I feel that the supercharger network is obviously something that I have to give a lot of kudos to Tesla for, because, I mean, that definitely was a big factor in helping people believe in electric cars. So the network is very vast at this point, and pretty much you'll be always in range of the supercharger. But Ford obviously has amassed, I think, enough different providers for its little charging network.
They claim to have the largest charging network.
I mean, I believe it. They have like 6 different companies below them, and it's a pretty smart move. Obviously, one, because of the fact that the size is pretty big at this point, and 2, being able to consolidate. I assume how the charging pass is going to work is it's going to consolidate all the payment methods into one app instead of having to have like 6 different apps for all the different charging providers. So it definitely makes.
But keep in mind, just a point to be made, that number of them having more chargers, a lot of these networks do not have, or not a majority DC charging. So there's slower charge rates. Meanwhile, all of Tesla's networks are at least, what's V1, 125 kilowatts? So all of them are considered fast chargers. So if you are looking at a Mach E, you should go on somewhere, what's this, like PlugShare?
Yeah.
And confirm that the ones you would be using on your route are DC fast chargers, or you will not be able to take advantage of that 45-minute, 80% charge time, or whatever number Ford. They're all around the same. Because the slower chargers will take, what is it, like 10 miles in an hour of charge? 12 miles on a 240 volt?
If that 8.
So you really want to look into that. Don't just look at the number of how many chargers
But thankfully, one of the biggest providers they have is Electrify America, and basically, I think every single Electrify America site is DC, and even up to 3.
They don't have that many of them
350
yet, though. Like what? Less than 300, 200?
Yeah.
They have plans for a lot, but
yeah, they're supposed to have like 700, 900, something like that. But I mean, in most metropolitan areas and on the major highways, I think I think I recently read that they like connected. They have a route across America now that is all Electrify America capable.
Tesla's biggest advantage was the supercharger network, and they no longer really have that.
I feel like they still do. It's going to become obviously less of an advantage when we already see reports in California, obviously, of just super long lines going to superchargers, and obviously the sales of the Teslas will outpace how many superchargers there are by a long shot, and they might just eventually become unusable based on how many people have Teslas. But I think for the time being, there's still definitely an advantage to someone when they're thinking about which brand to go to for an electric car.
Okay, now the tech involved. Another huge advantage that Tesla's always had over everyone, the one every Tesla owner spews as their biggest advantage, is over-the-air software updates and their self-driving car, or potentially future self-driving car. Ford is bringing driving, but it competes today. Potentially.
Right. I mean, it's not changing lanes.
Not definitely until, when did they say, later 2021?
Oh, they said it's going to be a feature added?
I believe so.
Automatic lane change?
I could be wrong, but I believe so. They did state that something significant would be added in 2021, and I want to say it was automatic lane changing. Might have to factor.
Well, I don't think the Mach E will be Ford's car that will have the significant autonomous features.
But it is.
That will carry the significant.
This is Ford's
Yeah,
new
but adaptive
system.
cruise control isn't, I mean, GM already has that in their Cadillac, so I don't
adaptive
really
cruise control
consider.
is the new standard.
Yeah.
But all autopilot is from Tesla is adaptive cruise control. I'm not talking about Tesla's full self-driving features. I'm talking about the
Right.
basic Tesla autopilot feature. This is that. It's just an adaptive cruise control system.
Yeah, but you obviously know that when people hype up Tesla's autonomous features, it's all the quirky little features from full self-driving rather than just the adaptive
I
cruise
personally
control
never used any
that
of
is
those
autopilot.
features, and everyone I speak to has the same sentiment. Autopilot is much more valuable than full self-driving, at least today. Obviously, eventually, full self-driving is going to get somewhere. Robo-taxis, we're all going to make $1 million with our cars. But as of today, autopilot is much more useful than any full self-driving feature. I personally would never get into another daily driver that doesn't have a similar adaptive cruise control system. I probably drive 80% of my miles on autopilot.
Yeah, but you're lazy.
This is the same sentiment I'm hearing around the globe, Dennis. This is
around the globe.
This is what the people
they
like.
Calling you up. They call
world leaders calling me up, like, hey, we really dig
Gio,
Tesla's autopilot system.
I love the autopilot, bro. Tell Elon that the autopilot is the best.
I don't know, man. Technology-wise, I think Ford is getting there. Well, put it this way: who's closer? Who's closer to Tesla's over-the-air updates and adaptive cruise control system? There's no one.
I mean, the problem is almost no one's made a car yet, so I can't answer these questions. Everyone has a plan.
Yeah.
Everyone has plans for over-the-air software updates. Everyone has a plan for autonomous features, but until those cars are actually built, I can't say. I mean, it's totally possible. I mean, not super likely, but it's possible that, I don't know, someone like Mercedes or whatever, some other big automaker is just working on some sort of autonomous features in the background that no one even knows about and they won't even talk about, and then automatically release a car that has level 2 or 3 autonomous features on it, just like that. But it's all in the planning stages. So for the time being, yes, Tesla is on its own. But I mean, everyone's talking the talk. Everyone has these big plans, and it's going to be interesting to see in 2 to 3 years if those plans actually come to fruition for a lot of these companies. They're planning on having these high-tech features in their electric cars.
Okay, here's the big question. 5 years from now, 2025, who's selling more cars? Tesla with the Model Y or Ford with the Mach E?
Model Y.
You think the Model Y will outsell the Mach E? Even with Ford's, what do they do, 12 million sales a year? 1,000 plus franchises?
Don't think that the Mach E will be Ford's best-selling electric car in 2025.
You think something else will come out?
I would hope that more than just 2 electric cars are going to come out from Ford in the next 5 years, being the Mach E and the electric F-150. I hope that there's going to be something else.
I don't know. That's pushing it. Look at all these other manufacturers. Audi, Jaguar. Where's their second electric car?
I mean, Audi already announced their 7th. I know announced. They didn't make it yet. I understand. But
who's on the road?
That's what I'm saying. We're still in such a relatively early stages of all these companies that trying to have any outlooks is kind of difficult because everyone's making these grandiose plans.
So you still think that the EV, what am I going to call this? The EV revolution, you still think that it has not been expedited? You think that once these sales start going through and people are interested in electric cars, they're going to expedite it further? You don't think they've already expedited?
Well, I think making a car takes a lot of time. So
from now to 2025, when did they say the electric F-150 was going to come out? 2023?
2022, maybe even.
You think there'll be another car that is going to be enough time on the road to outsell the Mach E in those 3 years?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the Mach E was announced, 2 years ago?
I know.
The electric F-150, maybe 3.
But it's just, I am just unsure at this current state if Ford will actually bring about a lot of volume for the Mach E following this year.
I think they want to.
I think they want to, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I know 50,000 the first year, but they're going to, I don't know if they'll hit the, 150,000, 200,000 yearly sales by 2025. Annual sales.
You think they will with another car?
I feel another car has a better chance.
Who?
Well, the electric F-150 for one.
You think the electric F-150 will outsell the
Mach E?
I don't know, man. The truck people that's a whole different segment. And there's already
we got 5
so
years
many
for the truck
electric
people.
trucks coming out. I mean, you have my favorite, the Badger. I mean, no one's going to outsell the Badger, Dennis. Ford can't outsell the Badger. You're crazy.
Trevor, not safe. I feel like in 5 years, the truck guys might come around to the idea.
But even if they do, you think they're going to go to Ford with that heritage, the name brand, or will they go to someone like Rivian?
Listen, man. The truck guys are the only people I've ever seen in my life that have just signs of Ford logos on their shirts, on their houses, on their hats. I feel like that is definitely the demographic of people that have the highest chance of staying with the company of their choice. I could be wrong.
But are those the people who will transition to electric cars, or will they still be buying the gas cars in 2025?
I don't know. Maybe the electric F-150 will be even better than the Badger, dog. I don't know.
You can't get better than the Badger.
It could be like the Cybertruck and the Badger put together and even better. I don't know. But I just don't know if the Mach E will be the best-selling car for Ford at that point, and I hope that they will have more than 2 cars because Ford is not some sort of startup brand, okay? Trevor can make 7 different cars, Gio. I think Ford can make more than 2 electric cars in the next 5 years, especially when Volkswagen wants a bajillion by then. Audi wants 20. Even BMW, who can't even spell the word electric, wants like 13 fully electric cars by 2025. I hope that Ford can bring out more than just 2 cars.
But all of these companies are limited on batteries and suppliers. Do you think it's better to spread out thin or focus on one car high volume? You have to understand something. The Mustang, not the electric Mustang, the regular Mustang is the most sold sports car. Crossovers are the largest segment in the U.S.
Well, let's remember that the Mustang. Remember the Mustang is one of the cheapest new sports cars you can buy. Yeah. Okay.
It's still what, $25,000 average.
Yeah.
Regardless, I feel that if this Mach E came with a gas motor, just a standard Mustang V6, whatever they have, it would probably be up there in sales, way up there. It's the perfect car. You have the name of the number 1 sold sports car, and you have the segment, the number 1 sold segment, with America's favorite brand.
I feel like calling it the Mustang in that scenario would be even worse than calling the current one the Mustang. Because at least here you can say that this is like a turning point in the company, and the original Mustang was highly iconic and big for the Ford brand. And now we're trying to recreate that magic with an electric car.
But remember, it also still kind of makes sense with the new naming schemes that they're doing with like the Bronco, multiple cars under the same brand. You're kind of creating sub-brands.
Want an electric. You know what I want? I want an electric Bronco.
You think they'll announce it?
If they make an electric Bronco,
they're not gonna. There was rumors from suppliers. The suppliers for the Bronco are the same people who have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Who are supplying. They're the same people that are supplying parts for the plug-in Ford Escape. So there's rumors that there might be a plug-in Bronco. You think it'll happen? Think we'll see it this week when they unveil the Bronco?
I don't think we'll see it this week. And I don't know if we'll ever, because, just looking at the current Bronco marketing, it's definitely off-road is the general theme, obviously, going on, and going out into the wilds and whatever. So I feel like it's a very hard sell to try to sell a car that's meant to go off-road and away from the world and try to convince people to also be around electricity, even if it's just a plug-in. So I don't know if they'll waste their time with that at this stage. Maybe in like 2023, 2024, we might get an electrified Bronco. But I feel like the upcoming Bronco in 5 days is going to be all gasoline, especially since they're banking a lot off the nostalgia factor. And I feel like the people that are nostalgic for Broncos are going to be people that will not consider an electric car at this point.
Do you think Ford is going to go the route of converting all of their cars to plug-ins before converting them to fully electric? Or do you think every fully electric car that comes out is going to be a brand new car like the Mach E? Will we ever see a fully electric, just base Mustang?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, totally.
Before or after a plug-in Mustang? Because they have created the Escape. They've added a plug-in option to it rather than going full electric.
I'm trying to think of other companies. I'm pretty sure that Porsche and their 911, which I'm going to consider the European Mustang, in terms of heritage and history. Obviously, the price differences are really different, but, both two-door sports cars with a lot of history and whatnot. So I think Porsche is going with a plug-in 911 eventually before moving on to a fully electric 911. So with that as my only frame of reference, and the fact that, like you said, they have a plug-in Ford Escape already, I think that there will be a plug-in Mustang before we see a fully electric.
Do you think that's
Mustang.
The right route to go? Do you think that'll result in more conversions to electric cars? Having a generation gap of owning a plug-in hybrid before switching to a full BEV?
Probably, because when you do a plug-in sports car, you can always you can always appeal to people's want for more power. Because the electric, an electric motor does provide an extra bit of power, and you can always draw comparisons to like the McLaren P1 and the Porsche 918 and the LaFerrari. Did you guys know they had a plug-in battery? I bet you didn't, but they were super fast because they had that extra power. Look at this Mustang. We got a plug-in battery right here. It's the same thing, basically. So I feel like, it's a easier sell maybe at that point. And I'm sure Ford knows their customers more than we do, and I'm sure they know their tolerance levels for how willing they'll be to transition towards fully electric cars versus just having a plug-in.
And back to Porsche, though. Porsche did say that every single car they make will be converted to fully electric except the 911. That car will always come with gas. Do you think the same will be with the Mustang? Will there always be a gas Mustang?
Well, Porsche can say that, but by 2040, they're either going to have to make it electric or just stop making the 911.
Well, they didn't say they weren't going to make it a 911 electric version. They just said they'll always have a gasoline one available.
Oh, yeah. So so you're asking me if there's going to be a gasoline version sold Mustang, alongside an electric version Mustang? Yes.
Forever? Ever?
I feel like until there are literal government mandates banning the sale of gasoline cars, I feel like basically any sports car until that point
you think
will
a
have
gasoline
a gasoline
Mustang will one day be like a limited production car that costs twice as much?
They'll have a last edition, yeah. They'll have a last edition limited. I won't be surprised if Porsche does something like that, because that's the car enthusiasts, I'm sure, will mourn the day that the gasoline engine is killed. So it wouldn't surprise me if they had a special edition of the gasoline.
You think that's the route we're heading? You think gas is going to be killed entirely?
I mean, it will be. I mean, people will be. I'm wondering what's going to happen with the used market, though, because obviously they're just going to ban the sale of new cars with gasoline motors, but you'll still be able to buy the used cars. So I'm wondering what's going to happen.
Will they be worth less or more?
Depends if what's going to happen with the gasoline stations. I mean,
we convert them all to roller rinks.
Oh man, wait, why roller rinks?
I don't know. It was the first thing I thought of.
That doesn't even make sense. They're all outside, and they're not really that big in terms of square footage.
Well, I saw a Starbucks that was built inside of an old gas station. It still had the entire gas station design. It had the cover, like the roof cover where you put the gas pumps. It was just a Starbucks inside the convenience area of a gas station. So all gas stations will be Starbucks. You heard it here first.
Okay. Yeah. Model Y versus Mach E, we got to hear. I don't know how we do that, but we did that.
So back to the beginning.
So,
which car are you buying?
Yep.
I give you $55,000 right now. You buying a Mustang Mach E Premium, or you buying the Model Y long range?
Okay. Well, wait.
Gotta pick one.
So I don't qualify for the. So this is without a tax credit then.
This is in your current situation. Let's assume you qualify for the tax credit. You only have to make what, $30-something thousand a year to qualify for the full $7,500 back.
So doesn't that mean I can get the GT?
No, we're comparing apples to apples here.
Okay,
but
fine.
The money does factor in.
Okay. Well, I'll just say it like this. Between those two, I think I might go with the Model Y.
Okay, and what about between the performance models?
I think I'd go with the GT.
Even though it's less performance than the Model Y?
I do prefer the design of the Mach E compared to the Model Y. And the difference in performance is not outweighed by how much more I like the look of the car.
And what if we go down to the standard range of both?
Well, we're assuming that the Model Y standard range is going to have 230 miles and not have a similar increase in range that the standard and performance range did?
Sure.
I don't know. That one's kind of a toss-up. I guess I might go with the Model Y.
Okay.
But I don't know. I might flip a coin for that one.
Anything else?
What about you?
What would I pick?
Yeah.
If I'm going base model of each, I'd probably choose the Model Y because of long-term value. Long-range version, I might go the Mach E and performance. If I'm buying a performance, I'm looking for performance, I'll probably choose the Model Y.
All right. Well, hopefully, eventually, we'll have more choices than just those two cars, with one of them not even being in production. So check back in 5 years, where we will hopefully ask this question again, and we'll have more than two options.